The skeletal remains of a ship from a bygone period, the RMS Titanic, can be found at the bottom of the pitch-black depths of the North Atlantic, which are draped in unending darkness and shrouded in eerie silence. It was once the most prized possession of the White Star Line and the epitome of Edwardian luxury. Yet today, it stands as a terrible monument to human hubris. On the 10th of April, 1912, she set sail from Southampton on her first journey, carrying more than 2,000 passengers, each with hopes and aspirations of a new world. However, for many others, those hopes were ruthlessly snuffed out by the frigid waves, and their destinies were determined by the ship's disastrous collision with an iceberg. In this video, we are going to talk about the unspeakable things that happened to the Titanic's third-class passengers. So before starting this video, please like this video and subscribe to this channel for our future updates. The Diary of Julius Caesar, the Leviathan's birth. The massive engineering accomplishment that was to become known as the Titanic began to take shape in the year 1909 as workers in Belfast, Northern Ireland, began construction on the ship. The Titanic was more than just a ship. It was a tribute to mankind's never-ending quest for grandeur. It was constructed at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, Northern Ireland, and overseen by the conscientious constructor Thomas Andrews. Anecdotes about the building of the Titanic circulate like rumors carried on the breeze by the ocean. A fascinating example of this type of story is the one about 1 million rivets, around 3 million rivets, the miniature steel pins that were responsible for holding the Titanic steel plates together, were heated and hammered into place by a group of hardworking individuals who were affectionately known as the Rivet Gang. The efforts of these unsung warriors echoed with every strike that melded the ship's structure, and they bore the physical brunt of the ship's construction. On March 31st, 1909, the keel-laying ceremony was held. This event, which is commonly known as the birth of a ship, took place. From that vantage point, the ship began to rise, very literally, as a gantry was constructed all around her. This enormous building, which stood a staggering 228 feet tall, served as the temporary home for the Titanic's developing hull. The construction of the ship was the Titanic's womb, and it was there that she took her maiden voyage. The design of the Titanic had a plethora of innovations, including a double-bottomed hull for better sturdiness, 16 watertight compartments for increased safety, and an enormous electrical system that powered everything from elevators to heaters. Unfortunately, none of these innovations prevented the ship from sinking. Titanic was the pinnacle of technological innovation at the turn of the century, and the Marconi wireless telegraph system that was on board is a prime example of this. This early radio communication technology was similar to social media of its time, connecting passengers with the globe, even though they were in the middle of the enormous Atlantic Ocean. In spite of the remarkable precautions taken for safety, there was a tinge of comedy that pervaded the building process. The Titanic was outfitted with state-of-the-art compartments that were supposed to keep the ship from sinking. But when it came to lifeboats, the ship was dangerously under-equipped. This was a decision that was made in the interest of beauty rather than practicality. This would turn out to be a horrifying mistake at a later point in time. White Star Line was a legendary shipping firm that was led by the astute J. Bruce Ismay. The White Star Line commissioned 3 Olympic-class liners, and the Titanic was the second of those ships. Ismay was adamant about surpassing the achievements of its primary competitor, Cunard Line, who had 2 record-breaking liners in their fleet, the Lusitania and the Mauretania. The White Star Line made the decision to prioritize size and comfort over speed in order to give passengers the most luxurious transatlantic experience imaginable. Because of this choice, the name of the Titanic will live on in the annals of nautical history. During the time when she was being built, the RMS Titanic was frequently referred to as Ship 401, a name that seems insignificant for such a renowned vessel. Only when she was prepared to take on the world was she given the moniker Titanic. This took place on May 31st, 1911, during a launch ceremony that was uncomplicated yet serious. In contrast to the customary practices surrounding the launch of a ship, there was no elaborate christening with the popping of a bottle of champagne. The fact that the White Star Line had stopped doing this a long time ago contributed to the ship's air of being exceptional. As a result, Ship 401 transformed into the Titanic over the course of nearly 2 years, becoming a symbol of the era's unrelenting drive to achieve more. At the time, none could have foreseen the dreadful end that would befall this mighty giant of the seas. The echoes of rived hammers and the shadows of towering gantries were the fertile ground for the beginning of her voyage, which would leave an unmistakable stamp on the pages of maritime law. The Elysium at sea, the unrivaled opulence of the Titanic. During the golden age of ocean liners, the Titanic was the epitome of luxury. It represented an almost heavenly realm of splendor that was only available to the ship's first-class passengers. Sadly, the Titanic met an untimely demise. This enormous floating palace was an unrivaled spectacle, a world brimming with magnificence that outshone the most prestigious hotels of the era. When passengers boarded the ship in April 1912, they were met with the magnificent grand staircase, which served as the beating heart of the Titanic's sumptuous ensemble. This staircase was the centerpiece of the ship's opulent interior. This work of art and architecture was crafted from the highest quality oak, and its polished surface reflected the shine of the intricate glass dome that was placed above it. A clock that was encased in an elaborate panel with the inscription "Honor and Glory Crown Time" served as the staircase's centerpiece and was a poignant symbol considering the outcome of the ship's journey. The Great Staircase, on the other hand, was simply the prelude to the symphony of decadence that was the Titanic. If one were to wander across the ship, they would eventually come upon the exquisitely embellished first-class dining saloon, a location that radiated grace and allure. Distinguished travelers such as Colonel John Jacob Astor IV and Benjamin Guggenheim sat here, their silverware glistening under the electric chandeliers as they enjoyed exquisite dinners. There is a persistent urban legend that the world-renowned chef Auguste Escoffier, also known as the King of Chefs and the Chef of Kings, served as a consultant for the meal on the Titanic. It was a delicious irony, however, that the ship's much-vaunted a la carte restaurant was not a member of the White Star Line, but rather was leased out to Italian hotelier Luigi Gatti. This restaurant served as a source of pride for the entire ship. The Titanic was designed to be more than just a place to dine. It was also an oasis of pleasure and amusement. The gymnasium, which was run by the ebullient Mr. Thomas Macaulay and served as a wonderland of Edwardian fitness, was supervised by Mr. Macaulay. Devices that were the precursors to current gym equipment, such as the electric camel and the mechanical horse, were available for passengers to test out throughout their journey. They were able to row on a mechanical rowing machine while looking out at the boundless expanse of the ocean, which added a new element to their normal training regimen. The ship had a well-stocked library for those who were interested in academic pursuits, and those with more social dispositions might enjoy the Café Parisien or the smoking lounge, which were both themed after prominent social locations of the era. In particular, the Café Parisien was an appealing sunlight setting with trellises and ivy that offered the idea of a sidewalk cafe in the middle of Paris. On board the Titanic, not a single convenience was devoid of a sprinkling of mystery. In a period when traveling to other countries was a luxury reserved for a select few, one of these luxuries was the Turkish bath, a unique and unusual offering. Here, visitors might relax in the sweltering heat and then take a refreshing dip in a plunge pool that is filled with salt water pumped in directly from the icy Atlantic Ocean. Madame Obar, who is famous for her energizing massages, was in charge of supervising this unusual bathing procedure, which was new to many people. The Titanic, in all of her splendor, was more than just a ship. She was a floating microcosm of the lifestyle of the Edwardian elite, a haven of pleasure, comfort, and opulence. Tragically, she sank in the North Atlantic Ocean. Lost in the whirlwind of splendor that was their home on the sea, the first-class passengers who were on board for her first trip were blissfully unconscious of the impending doom that awaited them. Below deck, There were many hopes and dreams. The plight of those who were traveling on the Titanic in the ship's third-class cabins in April of 1912 served as a stark contrast to the luxurious conditions found in the upper decks of the ship. The Titanic symbolized the beginning of a new life and an opportunity for a brighter future for hundreds of passengers traveling in third class. These hopeful spirits, who carried their dreams in little luggage, discovered their lodgings below deck, which were a long cry from the opulence that characterized the first class. The accommodations in third class were a model of simplicity, with rooms that could accommodate anywhere from 2 to 6 people. Bunk beds, a wash basin, and a tiny cabinet were the only pieces of furniture in these rooms, which stood in stark contrast to the luxurious private suites located above. However, even these meager rooms marked a significant improvement in the traveling conditions for passengers with lower socioeconomic status. The White Star Line had made a determined effort to provide better than steerage class on other ships by supplying conveniences such as linens and warm cabins. Steerage class was the lowest type of accommodation available on a ship. But for these passengers, life aboard the Titanic was very different from what everybody else experienced. The recreational amenities were at best minimal, yet residents may congregate in the common area to enjoy music, laughing, and friendship with one another. Anecdotes of impromptu music sessions and vibrant dancing sequences are resonant with the spirit of resiliency and shared humanity that permeates among these passengers. Their voices offered a melodic escape from the monotony of daily life, and Irish immigrants, such as Margaret Molly Brown, were known to pass on ancient melodies in the Gaelic language. The Titanic's third-class passengers came from a wide variety of cultural backgrounds. Therefore, the ship made an odd effort to accommodate their diverse culinary preferences. Breakfast options such as oatmeal, smoked herring, and jacket potatoes provided healthful food, whereas supper menus had a variety of straightforward yet satisfying entrees to choose from. The rich diversity of cultures represented in the third-grade class was reflected in the variety of foods that were offered for lunch. The story of the Goodwin family, who were on their way to establish a new life in the United States, is one that is told very frequently. The fact that the family of 8 had to make do with a small amount of room did not prevent the children from viewing this situation as an exciting opportunity for adventure. The close quarters encouraged a sense of community and allowed for the easy exchange of tales, aspirations, and acts of charity along with loaves of bread. However, not everything was up to standard. These guests frequently found themselves lost due to the ship's arrangement, which resembled a maze. The fact that many of the people traveling in third class were immigrants who knew very little English added insult to injury because of the language barrier. In spite of these challenges, a good number of passengers in third class on board the Titanic regarded their trip as an exciting adventure. Kate Gilnard, then a teenager, regarded the journey as a passageway to independence. Years later, when reflecting on her experience, she recalled the thrill she had when she first boarded the ship. She, along with a great number of other people, saw the Titanic as a stepping stone to a better future. An intriguing element emerges in the complex narrative of the Titanic's third-class passengers, and that element is the unique attention that was accorded to youngsters who were traveling in this class. The ship had a strict class system, but for the younger passengers, that system was relaxed just a little bit. This gave the younger passengers the opportunity to sample some of the ship's lavish facilities, which were normally reserved for those in the higher echelons of society. One of these kids was an enthusiastic and lively 6-year-old named Frank Goldsmith. The story of Frank exemplifies the one-of-a-kind opportunity that is presented to children in the third grade. The ship's authorities understood the need of fostering a sense of exploration and independence in the younger passengers, even while they were required to keep the adults sequestered in their assigned places below deck. As a direct result of this, the class restrictions placed on children were loosened, and they were granted freedom to investigate areas of the ship that were typically off-limits to their adult counterparts. In the case of Frank Goldsmith, it was his boyish curiosity that drove him to wander into the second-class open space. This location, which is often off limits to third-class passengers, provided him with an opportunity that was both unique and fascinating. The profound influence that the Titanic's layout had on the experiences of its passengers is brought home by the childlike glee with which Frank celebrated his newly acquired independence. The ship offered a rare moment of unification in the midst of the grandeur and strict divides of class, by allowing youngsters to explore and play without the burden of the limits imposed by their class. The significance of one's location aboard the ship, however, took on a far more serious tone as the tragic events of that fateful night played out in their entirety. The passengers who were traveling in third class had a great deal of control over the outcome of the scenario thanks to the location they were in when the catastrophe occurred. Those passengers who were below deck in third class were not warned about the iceberg until it was too late, in contrast to their counterparts who were traveling in first class and received urgent warnings of the impending danger. Due to the lack of timely information, when the iceberg began to cause water to leak into the living quarters of third-class passengers, they found themselves in a precarious situation with little time to either prepare for or respond to it. The corridors on board the ship were laid out in a way that was similar to a maze, making it difficult for many of the passengers to find their way around. As a result, the situation quickly descended into chaos and confusion. During this upheaval, family members who had become separated discovered that they were tragically unable to regroup or coordinate an escape, which led to heartbreaking stories of families being torn apart and ultimately dying in the freezing depths of the Atlantic Ocean. One such family was the Goodwins, the Anna Mundi of the ocean. The narrative of the Titanic is not just one of fascinating events, but also a collection of stories that have reverberated throughout history and have captivated our imaginations. Thomas Andrews and Bruce Ismay, the ship's designers and builders, were the ones in charge of the Titanic's construction and operation from the beginning. Ismay was driven by ambition, with the goal of creating not just the largest but also the most opulent ship afloat. But Andrews was absorbed with his craft and oversaw every aspect with an obsessive level of attention. The Titanic was also home to a wide variety of people, each of whom had a singular history associated with them. Margaret Brown, a woman of tenacity and grit, was a shining star among the glittering cast of characters in first class. She had just returned from Egypt, where she had found both actual and figurative riches, and was on her way back to Europe when she boarded the Titanic. She had no idea that her bravery and compassion in the midst of the catastrophe would one day earn her the nickname Unsinkable. When we get to the depths of the ship, where the crew is toiling away, and the narrative takes a sharp turn for the worst, men like Frederick Fleet, who served as the lookout, existed in a realm apart from the opulence that existed above. Later, Fleet, who had seen the calamitous iceberg but was unable to avert the calamity, lamented, "If only we had binoculars." Fleet had seen the iceberg but was unable to prevent the disaster. Captain Edward Smith, a seasoned sailor, displayed an astounding level of composure by managing his crew all the way up until the ship sank. His parting advice, which echoed the spirit of the sea, was for everyone. In the meantime, the ship's band, which was being conducted by Wallace Hartley, kept playing, which served as a soothing refrain to the turmoil that was developing. Their tune was a heart-rending illustration of the bravery they displayed. The Titanic was not just about the wealthy passengers or the crew members. Rather, it was about the myriad lives that collided on that doomed voyage. The ambitious creators of the ship, the committed crew members, the hopeful immigrants seeking a better life. All of these individuals and more contributed a thread to the tapestry of history that the Titanic weaved. When reflecting upon the unfathomable tragedy that unfolded on that cold April night in 1912, our memories are not confined solely to the ship itself. They encompass the individuals who inhabited its decks, shared laughter, and forged connections within its luxurious walls. The Titanic, with all its opulence and grandeur, is inseparable from the lives it contains. The resonance of that ill-fated voyage continues to echo through history, a reminder etched in our collective consciousness. The narrative of the Titanic isn't merely about a ship sinking beneath the waves. It's a poignant testament to the lives that were entwined with its journey. It's a narrative that transcends time and serves as a lasting emblem of the fragility of human ambitions. The grand vessel, once believed to be invincible, met its tragic end due to a confluence of unforeseen events. Yet, amidst the darkest of waters, the Titanic's story stands as a beacon of several enduring themes. Firstly, it's a stark reminder of the inherent precariousness of human endeavors. The most advanced and sophisticated engineering can be humbled by the forces of nature. The Titanic's colossal structure, its watertight compartments, and cutting-edge technology couldn't save it from the unexpected iceberg, showcasing the limitations of even the most meticulous planning. Secondly, the tenacity of the human spirit shines brightly in the midst of tragedy. As the ship faced its inevitable demise, stories of heroism emerged. The crew members who remained steadfast in their duties, Captain Edward Smith, who guided the evacuation efforts, and the musicians who played on, providing comfort until the last moments, all exemplified the courage and determination that resides within humanity, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. Lastly, the unwavering strength of human connection is perhaps the most poignant theme. The Titanic was a microcosm of society, with passengers from various walks of life united in their shared journey. The ship's demise underscored the common thread that ties us all together, regardless of class, nationality, or background. The tales of compassion, sacrifice, and support that emerged from the disaster remind us of the innate empathy that can arise in the direst of circumstances. What do you think of our video? Let me know in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from me again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go. Thanks for watching.